Have you ever felt as if something invisible guides your choices? As if every motion, every desire, every impulse came from a place inside your mind you don't command? Something dark, ancient, that asks no permission and offers no explanation. It's there even when you don't see it. Carl Jung called it the unconscious. But that's not the most unsettling part. What truly distorts everything is what the unconscious keeps hidden. A silent, primal force runs through your personal history like a buried vein under skin, untouched, unnamed, but always pulsing. You don't name it, you don't face it, yet it moves you. It shapes your thoughts, your reactions, your obsessions. Sex. And no, not the act, not pleasure, not even desire itself. I mean sex as symbol, as psychic drive, as the silent engine behind nearly everything you do, even when you swear it's not. Why do you dress the way you do? Why do you choose your words so carefully around certain people? Why do you crave admiration, validation, acceptance? And why, when you're alone, do you feel that hollow space inside you? Because beneath all of it lies an ancient need to be desired, to belong, to not vanish. And if you don't understand that need, if you don't confront it, it begins to consume you from within. That's where Jung becomes vital. He never spoke of sex like society does. He saw it as archetype, a psychic force so vast, so persuasive, that if unrecognized, it becomes your shadow. And that shadow begins to steer your choices, your fears, your relationships, even your dreams. It makes you believe you're free, while every step you take is quietly dictated. Sex, as Jung saw it, isn't taboo. It's a key, a door to who you truly are. But of course, walking through that door demands something few are willing to face: the discomfort of your impulses, the rawness of your hidden desires, the collapse of your masks. Here's the truth. Most people aren't who they think they are. They are what their unspoken urges have shaped them to be. And the more they deny it, the more enslaved they become. What if everything you think is yours, your goals, your habits, your relationships, was colored by a misunderstood, mishandled, repressed sexual force pressing at the seams of your unconscious? What if that repression didn't make you stronger, but weaker, easier to manipulate? What if what you call morality or caution or reason is nothing but a polished box for something that still screams to be let out? Don't get it twisted. This isn't about pornography or scandal. It's far more dangerous. It's about how an entire society built its value system on the denial of a biological and psychic truth that keeps pounding just beneath the surface. The sexual drive doesn't vanish when ignored. It mutates into anxiety, into rage, into frustration, into control addiction, approval seeking, empty success, broken relationships, chronic loneliness, and persistent dissatisfaction. And if you can't see it, it's because you won't see it. Because to see it is to admit you're not in control. That there's a part of you so carefully hidden, you forgot it was ever there. What if your tastes, your passions, even your fears are deeply shaped by this force? What if even your strongest convictions are just rationalizations, desperate attempts to avoid the truth? When Jung spoke of anima and animus, he wasn't theorizing from cold academic distance. He was describing what he had seen, how the most disciplined, brilliant people fell, again and again, into existential collapse. And every time the path traced back to one thing: disconnection from their deep sexual dimension. Have you noticed how your biggest life decisions carry a strange tension you can't explain? How a single glance can move you more than hours of speech. How desire, not love, just desire, can make you betray your values, your plans, even yourself, that's the force we're talking about. And you can't tame it with pretty phrases or suppression. You either understand it, integrate it, or be destroyed by it. This isn't a video about sex. It's about true control. About the invisible thread pulling civilization forward, even as it pretends to rise above it. And you watching this have two paths. Keep believing you're free, or start searching for the real. Be careful, though. What you'll find, you might not like, but it will be real. Brutally real. Now we step into Carl Jung's world, because understanding what he uncovered won't just set you free, it may rewrite the way you see everything. Absolutely everything. Ready? This will hurt, but it will wake you. The first thing you must grasp is this: your mind is not a single entity. You are not one thing. Inside you live forces, desires, traumas, masks. Jung called it the self, a psychic totality we rarely integrate. And one of the strongest forces within that inner chaos is what he called libido. But not Freud's libido, narrowed to the genital. Jung went deeper. To him, libido is universal psychic energy. It's creative. It's destructive. It's the foundation of your personality. And yes, it's sexual. But it's not just about sex. It's about transformation. This is where most people get lost. They think denying sex is mastery, that repression means transcendence, that hiding it means growth. But what actually happens is fragmentation, a splitting of the self, a separation between what is felt and what is shown. And this split turns people into roles, performers of who they think they should be. Because what you repress doesn't disappear. It hides. And from the shadows it begins to stir like a deceived beast. Silent, yes, but growing louder. Have you ever wondered why you repeat the same mistakes in relationships? Why you attract the same people, the same conflicts, the same disappointments? It's not a coincidence. It's unconscious repetition. It's libido acting from the shadow, trying to resolve what you refuse to face, trying to find balance through chaos. Jung warned us again and again, what you don't make conscious becomes your fate, and that includes your sexual impulses. What you don't understand about yourself ends up controlling you. What you deny in yourself begins to possess you. Now listen closely. This is crucial. Repressed sexual desire doesn't just affect your intimate life. It seeps into your spirituality, your creativity, even your sense of purpose. Why? Because when that energy isn't consciously channeled, it distorts. It turns into obsession with control, compulsive goal chasing, desperate hunger for recognition, chronic craving for validation. You look around, and everyone seems to be chasing something: success, fame, a partner, money, power. But beneath it all, there's often the same silence, a brutal disconnection from their authentic sexual dimension. And this isn't moral judgment. It's not religious condemnation. It's clinical observation. Jung saw it in hundreds of patients, educated, refined, self-aware, yet broken inside, lost, fragmented, powerless before a force they didn't know how to name. Many came seeking spiritual, philosophical, existential answers, and Jung, with terrifying clarity, led them to look exactly where they didn't want to, toward the desire they had denounced for years. Because when desire is not accepted, it mutates. It infiltrates your thoughts, hides inside your choices, and slowly becomes a character. Yes, a character. A mask. Another hard truth no one wants to face. Most people are not themselves. They are a curated version, carefully sculpted to avoid rejection, to meet expectations, to preserve the illusion of order. But inside that mask, the unconscious fractures. And one of its loudest voices is Eros, attraction, magnetism, the hunger for connection, energy, creation, expansion. And what happens when this force is repressed for years? It begins to sabotage you. It sabotages your work, your relationships, your mental health. You cannot silence a part of yourself so deep without consequences. Jung was clear. All unexpressed energy becomes neurosis. And today, you see it everywhere. Brilliant people, talented people, people with resources, trapped, caught in cycles of anxiety, emotional dependence, existential emptiness. And no one dares name the real source, a brutal disconnection from sexual energy, not as vulgarity, but as something essential. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Sexual energy isn't just for pleasure. It's a tool for self-knowledge, for inner transformation. It's the raw material you can rebuild yourself with, if you know how to use it. The problem? No one teaches us that. They teach us fear, to hide, to silence, and so entire generations grow up mutilated, half their psyche asleep, their desire not gone, but disfigured. It disguises itself as ambition, as false romance, as fake spirituality, but it's still there, crying to be integrated. So now I ask you something you can't answer slowly. How many of your most important decisions were rooted in the desire to be desired? How many times have you shaped yourself into what you knew would attract attention, even if it pulled you further from who you truly are? How many times have you sacrificed authenticity for a flash of validation? If you're brave enough to answer honestly, you'll see something unsettling. That your life, in many ways, does not belong to you. It belongs to an unknown desire, to what Jung called the collective unconscious. In this case, it acts as a cultural sexual mold, a set of images, roles, and expectations we all absorb without realizing. And that mold is stronger than you think. It tells you how to desire, who to desire, when, and how much. It tells you what's attractive, what's normal, what's too much. And if you don't fit into it, you feel broken. But here's the most dangerous part. The more you try to fit in, the further you drift from your inner truth. That's when the symptoms appear. Because Jung also said, symptoms are the soul's attempt to heal itself. Fear, anxiety, depression, insomnia, existential distress. They're not the problem. They're the cry of something inside you that has been locked away for years. And if that cry is your unintegrated sexual energy, not the energy of a night, not superficial desire, but a deeper Eros, the one that connects you to your creativity, to your passion, to your personal power, then you must listen. This is the Eros Jung linked to individuation, to inner alchemy, to the journey toward the true self, not the social persona. And do you know the first step on that journey? Realizing you are not free, that your chains aren't in the system or in society, or even in your personal history. They are in your unconscious, in your shadow, in the corner where your sexuality was exiled, distorted, and hidden your entire life. And until you go there, you'll keep searching outward for what was always within. You'll keep believing you need love, success, recognition, when in truth, all you need is to reconnect with the source. That primal, raw, powerful energy that lived in you before you had a name. Sex. Yes, but not as magazines, movies, or algorithms portray it, as Jung saw it, as the most honest doorway to who you really are. And the question that remains is simple, yet devastating. Will you keep living as if that door doesn't exist? Because if you choose to open it, if you're truly ready, nothing will ever be the same. And here's where it gets even more twisted. Many people don't just ignore this deep energy, they project it. Jung said, "Everything you don't make conscious gets projected outward." Do you know what that means? That much of what you criticize, desire, or reject in others actually lives inside you. It's your own shadow, screaming through someone else's face. And few things trigger more projection than repressed sexual desire. This is the root of chaotic relationships, emotional dependence, distorted idealizations. You don't love the other person. You love what you project onto them. You love the part of yourself you don't know how to integrate. Look closely. When someone scares you, or when you feel an inexplicable, almost mystical attraction, you're not seeing them. You're seeing a mirror of the Eros you carry inside, but don't dare to touch. That's the trap. You don't fall in love with them. You fall in love with what they awaken in you. And what happens when what they awaken is so powerful, it destabilizes you? You chase it like an addict, not for love, but for necessity. Because without knowing, that person becomes your unconscious access point to your own inner power. But since you can't see it that way, you call it fate. You call them your other half. You call them partner. And you get lost in a story that justifies the attraction, the obsession, the emptiness, all because you don't know the real thing you're seeking is inside you. Jung saw it over and over. Men projecting their anima onto women. Women projecting their animus onto men. These aren't just poetic metaphors. They are inner realities, incomplete parts of your psyche, still waiting to be owned. And every time someone enters your life and shatters your assumptions, it's because they're touching one of those hidden parts. And what do most people do when they feel that kind of intense attraction? They run toward it. They become obsessed. They cling. They panic. Because true Eros is never comfortable. Real Eros disarms you. It disrupts you. It forces you to see yourself without filters. And not everyone survives that. Now let's go even deeper. Why does this energy have so much power over you? Why can it alter your nervous system, your judgment, even your identity? Because it's not just biology, it's myth, it's symbol, it's archetype. In every culture for millennia, sex has been seen as both sacred and dangerous. That is not a coincidence. The sexual act is the only moment when the ego dissolves completely, where control is lost, where the primitive, the divine, the animal emerge. Because they knew, whoever controls sex controls the individual. And if you don't take charge of your relationship with this energy, someone else will. And here comes the most disturbing part. You don't need to have sex control your life. You can be celibate, a monk, celibate by choice or by circumstance, and still be entirely ruled by this force if you don't know how to integrate it. Eros doesn't need to be physical to manifest. It moves through your fantasies, your insecurities, your blocked creativity, your ways of loving and hating. It shows up in how you compete, withdraw, relate to power, money, art. Repressed Eros will find any door to break through, and if it can't express itself directly, it will disguise itself, even as self-sabotage. Because yes, even self-sabotage can be an unconscious punishment for not allowing yourself to live what you truly desire. Jung warned us, what doesn't transform, repeats. And repressed desire, far from fading, becomes compulsion, patterns that sabotage lives across generations. How many family conflicts, how many personal tragedies are born from repressed, distorted, or unexpressed sexuality? Think about it. Loves that destroy others. Children who inherit undefined guilt. Secrets buried behind fake smiles and marriages that feel like living tombs. All because no one talks about it. Because no one wants to look at the true origin. The unconscious doesn't negotiate. It doesn't reason. It only expresses. And if you don't give it a conscious channel, it leaks wherever it can. Sometimes as neuroses, sometimes as disturbing dreams, sometimes as sudden passion, and sometimes as a shadow so deep you don't even know it's there, but it shapes everything. That's why Jung insisted on integration. It's not enough to control desire. You have to listen to it, understand what it's trying to say, because within that energy lies an evolutionary key. Eros, when it isn't perverted, is a force of extraordinary creativity. And here's something you didn't expect. Good ideas, great works, profound personal transformation often rise from the transmutation of desire. Jung connected it with alchemy, lead becoming gold, instinct becoming purpose, passion becoming consciousness. But that only happens if you have the courage to look inward, to face your shadow without flinching, to stop blaming the world for what you failed to integrate within yourself. Because at the core, what do you fear most about desire? Rejection? Judgment? Or is it the fear that if you allowed yourself to feel it, your entire life would collapse? Maybe you'll realize many of your decisions were deals with mediocrity, made to avoid confronting your inner fire. Maybe what scares you most isn't losing control, but realizing you never had it, that what you called desire was just a chain reaction of impulses you never understood. And what happens when you do begin to see? You become free. Not free in the superficial sense of doing whatever you want, but in the deeper sense of choosing with awareness, of looking directly at your Eros and saying, I know you're there. I don't need to disguise you. I can walk with you. And that changes everything. How you work, how you love, how you create, how you see yourself in the mirror, because you've stopped fighting against yourself. But be careful. Freedom comes with a cost. When you integrate your Eros, you can no longer blame others. You can no longer say, this happened to me, or they did this to me. You have to admit that many times it was you who built the box, that it was your own repression that made you a slave. And that isn't easy to erase, because we live in a culture that idolizes the victim, that applauds pain not as a phase, but as an identity. And breaking free takes strength. It demands a symbolic death, the end of the version of yourself that was crafted to please, to be accepted, to fit in. And that hurts, because there are wounds you cannot heal without first destroying, and your relationship with desire is one of them. Now imagine, just for a moment, that you had known all of this earlier, that from childhood you were taught your sexual energy was not a problem, but a sword, that you didn't need to hide your Eros, but you learned to listen to it, to channel it, to turn it into art, into action, into meaning. What kind of person would you be today? What kind of life would you be living? You can't change the past, but from now on, you can choose whether to keep ignoring this part of yourself or to finally let it transform you. And here's the most beautiful part. When you integrate your Eros, it no longer controls you. You no longer need to chase validation or fall into power games or live trapped in cycles of relational anxiety. Because Eros, when conscious, becomes light. A brilliant light. Yes, sometimes uncomfortable, but healing, creative, expansive. A light that doesn't just reveal who you are, but who you could become. So next time you feel an inexplicable attraction, disturbed by a desire you don't understand, paralyzed by an image, a person, or a sensation, don't run. Don't moralize. Don't disguise it. Ask yourself, what part of me is speaking right now? What needs to be seen? What is trying to be set free? Because maybe that desire isn't the problem. Maybe it's the doorway. And you, Will you open it? And just when you think you've understood everything, the final threat arrives. The most subtle, the one that's deceived millions without them knowing. Because once you make your Eros conscious, once you begin to see its power and integrate it, the spiritual ego appears, the enlightened persona, that inner voice that says, you've transcended desire. It no longer rules you. But be careful. That too is an illusion, another trap, because Eros is not transcended. It is inhabited. It is not overcome. It is honored. And if you think you're above all this, then you haven't understood it yet. This is where it gets more delicate, because the real work isn't about awakening to desire. It's about walking with it without turning it into your identity, without clinging to it, without worshiping it, without wearing it like a new costume. It's recognizing that Eros is neither an enemy nor a god. It is a part of you, a fragment of the fire that burns within. And like all fire, it can light your way, or it can destroy you. The difference lies in whether or not you recognize it. Look around. Everyone seems to be running towards something. Money, fame, the perfect body, the ideal partner. But what if all of it is nothing more than an unconscious ritual to reconnect with the lost Eros? What if the real path isn't about collecting more, but about looking within and discovering which part of you was silenced the moment you started behaving? Society wants you domesticated. It wants you predictable. It wants you disconnected from your desire, because it knows that someone who has reconciled with their Eros cannot be controlled. They don't buy empty narratives. They don't need to belong to a tribe to feel whole. They are free. And that is terrifying, because a free person is dangerous, not because they attack, but because they infect, because your very presence reveals how asleep the others still are. And now here we are, you and I, at the end of this journey. Or maybe at the beginning, depending on how you see it. Because what you've heard today aren't answers. They are cracks, fractures, questions that might haunt you for days. And that's okay. That's the sign something has shifted inside, that what was once repressed is beginning to take shape, to find a name, a form, a voice. Maybe now you'll start to notice things. Maybe you'll begin to understand what you desire, without fear. Maybe you'll see patterns. Maybe you'll realize you can no longer look at certain people, or at yourself, the same way. And that, believe me, is a good sign. Because only what is first seen with brutal honesty has the power to transform. But before you close this, I want you to do something. If you made it here, it's not a coincidence. Do this for me. No, do it for you. Because writing it down, naming it, acknowledging it out loud is an act of power. It's the first step toward no longer living in denial and beginning to live in truth. So if this video touched something deep in you, if it moved even a single stone from the wall you built around your desire, subscribe, because this channel isn't here to comfort you. It's here to disrupt you, to show you what no one else dares to show. We are not here to decorate the surface, we're here to explode it. So follow me, if you have the courage to look at what others hide, if you're tired of empty explanations, if you want to understand how your mind really works, and above all, if you're ready to stop lying to yourself. And now, I'll leave. But before I do, listen carefully. Close your eyes and ask yourself in silence.